Have you ever smelled a fragrance and it just felt right? Almost as if the perfumer knew you as a person. They knew your thoughts, memories, and experiences and distilled your soul into the bottle. This is no coincidence. In the fragrance industry, the 12 Jungian archetypes are commonly used to capture the target customer so that each fragrance can be tailored to their intrinsic wants. Well, in today's video, we're going to be flipping that script. Hello everyone, my name is Surya. I am a California-based perfumer, and on this channel we bridge the gap between the science and art of perfumery. In today's video, we're going to go down the path of psychology. We'll talk about the 12 Jungian archetypes and how to identify which one resonates with you the best. We will then match those core personality traits to some fragrance genres and notes that might best appeal to you. I'll also give you one fragrance recommendation for each personality type just so you have a starting point. If that sounds exciting, hit the subscribe button. Let's jump in. The 12 archetypes were actually invented by Carl Jung in 1964. He believed that humans shared a collective consciousness, and there are actually universal patterns of subconscious behavior that manifest as personalities. He recognized these universally recurring symbols across religions, cultures, and time periods. Over the decades, he distilled these symbols down into the 12 archetypes. Now, I've always had a deep appreciation for the idea of a shared consciousness. When I heard that Jung combined this concept with psychology, I was intrigued. I was even more intrigued when I learned about the Jungian archetypes in the context of fragrance brands. Identifying your target customer's archetype is actually one of the first few steps of creating a scent brief. This way, every decision you make can be tailored to the exact personality of the person you're trying to sell to. From the consumer's perspective, we can actually flip this script. If we know the archetypes and the way that fragrances are designed to fit them, we can then start choosing fragrances tailored to us. It's almost as if the perfumer had a picture of us in their mind when they were creating this fragrance. Now let's start with the innocent. The innocent archetype is also sometimes called the child. It's all about maintaining purity, innocence, optimism. There's a deep desire to do things the right way, and there's this childlike wonder and curiosity. You might be an innocent if you value simple pleasures, if you have strong moral principles, and if you easily trust others. So here are the notes that I associate with this archetype. I think of something clean and light. Clean like fresh air or musk, and purity with white florals. Now the fragrance that I associate with this archetype is Diptyque's Olean. It's just such a fresh and delicate white floral scent, and I think it perfectly captures the word purity. Now let's talk about the explorer. Explorers are basically driven by freedom. There's a deep desire to learn new things and go to new places. They resist conformity and convention, and they're always looking for a challenge. If you feel restless in routine, if you love to travel, and if you're constantly seeking new experiences, you might be an explorer. Now, when I think of explorer, I think of someone that's very outdoorsy. So the notes that I associate with explorer are something like cedarwood or vetiver. A lot of perfumers also create this soil accord, which is based on this material called geosmin. Geosmin has this wet earth facet which smells like the first rain. I think this note is also perfect for an explorer. The most obvious recommendation here is terre d'hermès, grapefruit, vetiver, and dry woods. This perfectly captures exploration. If you want something a little bit more out there, I would recommend a lot of fragrances from the Zoologist brand. We're actually going to talk about Zoologist in another archetype, but a lot of their scents are very earthy and perfectly fit this archetype. Now let's talk about the sage. The sage values wisdom above all else. It's all about the quest for truth and knowledge. They're more analytical, thoughtful, and they usually tend to take on the role of a mentor or advisor. You might be a sage if you enjoy deep conversations, if you're always learning and reading, or if you make objective decisions. Now for me, I always picture tea fragrances when I think of the sage archetype. You can also go in a little bit more of an abstract decision with something like paper or frankincense. Now, my favorite tea fragrance is Nishane's Oolong Cha. Oolong Cha is the perfect oolong tea with citruses and musk. Nutmeg and fig add an interesting texture to the fragrance, which makes it overall contemplative in my opinion. I usually wear this fragrance when I'm spending a quiet day at home. It helps me get into my mind and leave the external world behind. Now let's talk about the hero. The hero is generally motivated by proving their worth. They focus on courage and never shy away from difficult acts to help others. They're very determined and competent and always love a challenge, especially when others are backing down. If you are naturally competitive or feel called to a greater purpose and you never back down from what's right, then you might be a hero archetype. Now, in terms of fragrance, this can again go in two directions. You can go bold with something like leather and warm spices, or you can go confident with something like amber. To me, when I think of the hero archetype, I think of Xerjoff Naxos. Now, we actually did an in-detail breakdown of Naxos in the last video, so if you want to check that out, the link's going to be in the description. But in my opinion, the honey, tobacco, and tonka bean combination of Naxos exudes confidence. If I was the main character in a story, this is what I'd wear. Now let's talk about the Outlaw. The Outlaw is all about breaking rules. They challenge the structure of society and are often the catalysts for great change. They also value radical freedom, much like the explorers. If you question authority and often go against the grain, or if you feel restricted by traditional systems, you might be an outlaw. When I think of outlaws, I think of these dark, rebellious scents. Something with smoke, tobacco, leather, and dark woods. So I picked a fragrance that embodies nonconformity. Sin Santo and Sage from Savoir Faire. Now this fragrance has this beautiful smoky Palo Santo, which basically captures the essence of being an outlaw. Sage, tobacco, musk, and Japanese cedar is what makes up the rest of the fragrance. I have a first impressions of this on my channel, so if it sounds interesting to you, please check that out. Next, we go on to the magicians. Magicians seek to understand the fundamental laws of the universe and then shape them to their own reality. They are usually the visionaries, they're charismatic, and they are also great catalysts for change. Their greatest value is transformation. You might be a magician if you enjoy helping others see new perspectives, or if you focus on your dreams and imagination. Now, magicians are very mysterious, so when I think of them, I think more of incense or rare resins. I also think of something exotic like spices. Now, I definitely know which fragrance I would suggest for this category. This fragrance is Varanasi by Mio Fushuni. Now, the fragrance Varanasi was inspired by a temple in India, and the first time I smelled it, I was transported back to my childhood. I remember sitting on this cold stone floor, which is soaked in years and years of incense. The incense that's used in the rituals of the temples is perfectly captured in this fragrance. This fragrance is just sacred and magical. It's supported by saffron, nutmeg, rose, cypriol, and such amazing notes. This is one that I just can't describe, and it has to be tried. Now, let's quickly go to the opposite end of the archetype spectrum and talk about the Everyman. Before we move on to the next 6 archetypes, I want to talk to you about what my channel is really about. I've seen a lot of channels talk about their top 10 recommendations or new fragrances that are coming out. But for me, my passion for fragrance comes from connecting it to all my other passions. This means topics like psychology, philosophy, frameworks thinking, things that I love to explore in my free time. I wanted to capture all these topics in the context of fragrance because 1, it makes me a better perfumer, but 2, it also makes me a better consumer. Understanding the underlying science of how we think about fragrance and how we experience it is what my channel is all about. Thank you for joining me on such an exciting journey, and every single one of your subscriptions means the world to me. Let's keep going with the next archetype. The Everyman is basically the regular person archetype. This is someone that values belonging and seeks connection through their common humanity. They're very down to earth, very empathetic, and amazing at building relationships. If you value authenticity, prefer genuine connection over status, and value the dignity of everyday life, you might be an Everyman archetype. In terms of fragrance, this is just something versatile and approachable. Citrus, clean musk, soft florals and woods, something that belongs everywhere and is never offensive. For the Everyman, my pick is Chanel Allure Edition Blanche. In my opinion, this is actually one of the best balanced designer scents. Fresh lemon and creamy vanilla make it very approachable, but the sandalwood also makes it sophisticated. It's clean, it's versatile, it's inoffensive, and I wear it as my dumb reach. Now, we know every man needs to fall in love, so let's talk about the lover. Lovers value passion. They seek intimate connections and they appreciate the beauty in everything. They prioritize emotional experience and relationships above all else. If you're deeply romantic, if you value aesthetic experiences, or if you maintain a lot of close relationships, you might be a lover. Now, in terms of fragrance, this just has to be romantic and sensual fragrances. Rose is the most obvious note, supported by vanilla, amber, and musk. Rose is actually one of my favorite notes, and I have a lot of rose fragrances. In the future, I'm thinking of making a top 5 rose fragrance list. But for now, if I had to just pick one, I'm gonna pick Argo's Adonis Awakens. Adonis Awakens is centered around this beautiful, watery, pink Bulgarian rose. It's actually supported by a lot of Indian ingredients like jasmine sambac and Mysore sandalwood. There's actually a hidden secondary rose in the base, which really ties this entire fragrance together. A master composition that balances light and dark. This is my go-to date night fragrance. Next, let's move on to the funny guy. Let's talk about the Jester. The Jester is all about living in the present. It's about bringing joy and happiness to the people around you. They generally use humor and playfulness to cope with life's challenges, and they help everyone see the bright and funny side of life. If you don't take life too seriously, if you naturally use humor to diffuse tense situations, and if you value spontaneity, you might be a Jester. So this one's all about being playful. So I can think of fruits, candy, and bright citrus. And in my opinion, the perfect candy fragrance is Hard Candy by Aaron Terence Hughes. Now, it took me months and months to actually find this fragrance. In the end, I actually bought this fragrance from a reviewer when I saw it in his video backdrop. Shout out to Ray, I'll link him in the description as well. Now, Hard Candy is the most playful and vibrant fragrance I've ever experienced. It's all about fruits in the opening, raspberry, strawberry, and cotton candy. But the secret ingredient that Aaron uses perfectly is something called heliotropes. Now, heliotropin is actually a heavily restricted molecule because it's used in the manufacturing of MDMA. There are recreations that can give a similar effect, but nothing is like the original heliotropin. It has a slightly almondy note, but the only way that I can describe this ingredient is it's psychedelic. While it is slightly nutty, it's also commonly tied to cherry. Heliotropin is the star of this fragrance, which makes it so playful and psychedelic. But there's one more secret hidden ingredient, and that is oud. I don't know how Aaron blended oud so masterfully and softly into this fragrance, but it is the most harmonious oud blend that I've ever smelled. I know this one's really hard to get, but if you can get your hands on it, I would definitely recommend it. I'm going to be doing a full review of this fragrance at some point because it is by far the most worn fragrance in my collection. If I had to give up everything else, this is the one that I would keep. Now let's talk about the Caregiver. The Caregiver archetype is also called the Mother archetype because it's all about protecting. Caregivers often put others' needs and values above their own. They're nurturing, they're compassionate, and they're naturally drawn to helping others. So if you are naturally empathetic and often take the supporting role in relationships, you might be the caregiver. In fact, some of your friends might call you the mother of the group. So when I think of comforting, nurturing fragrances, I think of a milk accord. Warm milk, soft vanilla, and powdery notes is what come to mind for the Caregiver. Now, last week when I was at the scent room, I actually discovered one of my favorite milk-based fragrances. This one is Love Me Latte by Narcotica. It has this beautiful steamy milk accord with coffee, but to me, it just sounds like the perfect caramel. Sweet vanilla, toffee, creamy tonka bean, that's what makes this scent the perfect nurturing fragrance. Honestly, this fragrance felt like a hug every time I sampled it, with the subtle cinnamon and cardamom and the soft vanilla. This is by far the most comforting fragrance I've ever smelled. Now let's talk about the creators. Creators are driven by legacy. They want to give form to their vision. They value originality and authenticity in self-expression. If you're imaginative, place innovation over convention, and feel the most alive when you're bringing new ideas to life, you might be a creator. So creator fragrances are going to be artistic, they're going to be innovative, they're going to be new. For me, I would pick something unconventional with notes that I would never put together. This is why my pick for the creator fragrance is Marshmallow by Unique Luxury. Now, Marshmallow is this beautiful gourmand. It starts off with marshmallow, with caramel, with rose, with musk, but there is one secret note: incense. A marshmallow incense fragrance is not one that I thought I would ever wear, but it's quickly becoming one of my favorite fragrances. The creativity and artistic brilliance behind this one is what made me pick it for this archetype. This is by far one of the most masculine marshmallow gourmand fragrances that I've ever smelled. If you're looking for something really artistic and unique, you should try to sample this one. Now let's look at the last, arguably most powerful archetype, the ruler. The ruler is all about taking responsibility. It's about creating order from chaos. Rulers naturally take charge. They lead and provide structure and stability. If you value efficiency and organization, if you're naturally drawn to leadership positions, and if you feel the need to change the environment around you, you might be a ruler. Now, when I think of the ruler archetype, it's all about luxury and prestige. You want to project power and sophistication. For rulers, I would always recommend expensive florals, precious woods, and royal ouds. Now, I promised you a second zoologist fragrance, and I arguably saved the most intricate fragrance for last. This is Sacred Scarab by Zoologist Perfumes. Before we actually talk about the fragrance, let me read off some of the notes. Lemon, wine, blue lotus, plum, raisins, olibanum, myrrh, galbanum, cedarwood, juniper, styrax, benzoin, labdanum, musk, amber. To be honest, I've only ever smelt this fragrance once, but it left such a lasting impression on me that I've been dying to smell it again. It's this mystically sweet incense fragrance with so much character that is hard to describe, especially because I'm trying to describe it from memory, something that I smelled more than a year ago. Boozy, sweet, resinous, ambery. That's what I think of when I think of Sacred Scarab. I know Zoologist as a brand can make us feel a bit reserved, but overall, Sacred Scarab is one of their most beautiful, intricate, and powerful fragrances. For me, this fragrance captures the image of an Egyptian ruler. Now, those were the 12 archetypes that brands use to target you. Hopefully, you can now use them to target the brands that would best suit you as well. In the comments, let me know which archetype you most resonate with, and whether those notes also align with the notes that you tend to enjoy. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.